My name is Amber Adamastos. I come from a small, semi-rural community in southern Oregon, where I lived with my mother, as well as San Diego, where I lived with my father. My mother worked as a bookkeeper. My father set tile. Neither of my parents went to college. When I began my studies in 2003, I discovered that I knew very little about the world, much less about how it worked or what was possible within it. I wanted to study every subject and take classes in every department. But the university universe and its bureaucracy was a bit overwhelming, so I transferred to a community college, where I attended part-time while working at a coffee shop. Back then, I didn't know how my degree would translate to a career, but I was convinced that earning any degree would guarantee me a decent, well-paying job. By 2008, the mistaken yet common illusion I had held about my job prospects had been completely dashed. I had only just transferred back to university, yet felt the urge to get out before acquiring further debt. However, in the fervor of my earlier idealism, I had taken courses in so many different subjects that I wasn't anywhere close to fulfilling the requirements of any single major. I left without finishing my degree in 2010. At that time, I was scared to take on more debt and decided instead to try to find honest work until the economy recovered a bit. After a few years of working low-paying jobs, I finally returned and obtained my Bachelor of Arts in 2013. That same year, I enrolled in a graduate-level program at the University of Pennsylvania. I believed with all my heart that a master's degree from such a well-known and well-respected institution would at least get me work that paid above the poverty line, and was therefore worth the money invested. I loved Penn and even achieved straight A's my first semester. But by the beginning of my second semester in 2014, I could no longer defer my previous student loans, and I was forced to drop out when I couldn't make my student loan payments, which were then up to $2,000 per month. I returned home, absolutely dejected, to move back in with my family at age 31. After months of being hounded by dozens of collection agencies over the phone and through the mail, I filed for bankruptcy later that year. It was a devastating experience to go from so much hope and excitement for the future to feeling like I was completely out of options. In 2016, a bankruptcy judge decided that being forced to repay my loans at that point would cause an undue hardship. So it was ruled that some of my loans, including those held with Citibank, would be wiped out. The court granted me the ability to get out of default by setting up new repayment terms with private lenders, as well as for my federal loans with the Department of Education. You can imagine the sense of relief I felt at regaining control over my situation. After years of uncertainty and disappointment, I finally had the chance to set things right, get back on track, and lead a normal life. At the beginning of 2017, this year, my bankruptcy officially closed, and all of my creditors received notice of the judge's discharge order, including Citibank. The weight of the past 3 years was finally lifted, and I was free to reestablish myself, even as I faced the difficulty of having a bankruptcy on my record. But mere weeks after my discharge, Citibank ignored the order of the judge and turned me over to collections, threatening my fragile credit as well as my newfound stability if I didn't pay. Over the next few months, I received multiple collection letters and even found out that my boyfriend's grandmother had received a call. When the judge found out what Citibank did, he ordered the bank's lawyers to show cause why they shouldn't be held in contempt for ignoring his order. Instead of apologizing or explaining, Citibank's lawyers are now arguing that the judge has no power over them, because Citibank buried a ripoff clause in the fine print of its loan agreement. Their lawyers claim that any dispute related to my loan must be decided in secret and private arbitration proceedings, even though it has been discharged. In private arbitration, the judge would be powerless to enforce any of his orders. Instead, a private firm chosen by Citibank would decide what happens, and neither I nor the judge would be able to appeal their ruling. A new rule from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau addresses the widespread harm caused by forced arbitration. It would allow consumers like me to join together to challenge Citibank or other bank lenders in class action lawsuits when they break the law, rather than having to fight them one by one, like me, in secret arbitration. The rule also brings transparency to individual arbitration proceedings by creating a public record of claims and outcomes, ensuring banks and lenders cannot use these clauses to cover up their illegal behavior. However, Congress has moved to repeal this rule using an obscure tool called the Congressional Review Act. If passed, this resolution would strip consumers of their Seventh Amendment right to take banks to court and would even prevent the CFPB from ever issuing another rule to restrict forced arbitration. The resolution passed the House 2 weeks ago and needs just 51 votes to pass in the Senate. If the CFPB rule is repealed, companies like Citibank can profit from ignoring the lawful orders of judges that my tax dollars pay for and operate outside of the law in a private justice system. We can't allow powerful corporations to hurt consumers like me, real people, like all of us on this stage, by simply opting out of state and federal laws. Yet even if Congress chooses to leave this particular rule alone, the Regulatory Accountability Act would block agencies, including the CFPB, from issuing crucial public protections like this rule to restrict forced arbitration. I urge Congress to support the CFPB arbitration rule and vote against the Regulatory Accountability Act. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amber. I now introduce Penny Dryden.